No one had ever dared to approach the alien princess before, but a brave human soldier kissed her. The ceremonial chamber smelled like ozone, warm stone, and the faint, bitter scent of anxiety sweat. Rows of diplomats stood stiff as stasis rods in their ornamental uniforms, eyes locked forward, afraid to blink lest it be interpreted as insolence. Some of the humans, particularly the ones from Earth's united Eastern conglomerate, were visibly trembling, their knees nearly clattering against polished metal flooring. That wasn't surprising. The alien princess was about to descend, or rather appear, since descending implied gravity had any authority over her, which it decidedly did not. Sergeant Theo Vance, stationed toward the rear because he hadn't remembered to shine his boots or learn any of the 46 required formal phrases in Yell-Sherry diplomatic dialect, was chewing a mint gum tablet with the dead-eyed patience of a man who'd sat through too many ceremonial greetings. He adjusted the collar of his uniform, standard issue, lightly scorched from a plasma grenade mishap 2 weeks ago, and patched with a sealant that smelled like burnt marshmallow. He looked around the chamber and wondered how many others were pretending not to need to pee. "Do not speak, do not move, do not exist loudly," hissed Lieutenant Creeley next to him, whispering through her smile like a venomous ventriloquist. "You're here by accident, and I swear if you ruin this..." Theo raised both hands in mock surrender. "What are they gonna do? Promote me again, just to demote me harder?" A horn blared. Not a real horn, but a sonic projection resembling what a black hole might sound like if it played jazz, and everyone snapped to attention. The chamber's ceiling peeled apart like a blooming mechanical flower, and light poured in, golden, bending at impossible angles, dancing as if it had somewhere better to be. Then she arrived. Princess Seren of the line of El Nare floated downward, or maybe phased downward, like a glitch in space made of grace. Her form was humanoid, draped in flowing cloth that shimmered in microfilaments, each thread humming with data. She hovered a good meter above the floor, her long silver hair trailing behind her as though underwater. Her skin had the pale, iridescent glow of moonlit frost, and her ears, long and pointed, twitched slightly, like radar dishes picking up sarcasm. Her eyes were wide, luminous, a deep violet that threatened to unfold anyone who looked too long into them. Theo scratched his chin. "She looks like an elf from space." Creeley pinched his arm. "Shut." Up the entire room bowed in synchronized motion, 1,000 bodies bending as one. Theo, however, did not. He was mid-chew, caught halfway through an ill-timed jaw click that echoed uncomfortably loud in the hush. Seren's eyes landed on him. Theo froze, the gum suddenly feeling like radioactive taffy. Then, as if he just remembered where he was, Theo stepped forward. 1 step, 2. Creeley made a sound like a dying goose, softly and panicked. 3 steps, and he stood in the circle of light beneath the princess. He could feel the heat of attention on his back. Alien guards with energy blades. Earth diplomats sweating through several layers of authority, and one very uncomfortable planetary ambassador slowly whispering his will into his smart lapel. Theo looked up. She looked down. Something flickered in her expression. Recognition? Amusement? Telepathic indigestion? He didn't speak, didn't ask permission. His brain, blessed with more bravery than sense, shoved him forward until he stood directly under her. His eyes met hers. And then, because something in his gut told him it would make everything better or infinitely worse, he kissed her. It wasn't a deep kiss, not passionate, not lingering, a peck, really, barely lip to lip, but it landed like an asteroid in a calm lake. Shock rippled outward. The entire chamber gasped as if in one choreographed breath. Energy weapons hissed to life. Serene's guards moved, crackling with lethal elegance. Theo stepped back, hands raised, one finger up. "Okay, in my defense, Your Highness floats in a very inviting way." No blade struck, no plasma bolt, no sudden neural shredding. Instead, Seren blinked slowly. Then she exhaled, and her glow brightened to a brilliance that pushed shadows from every corner of the room. "Finally," she whispered, voice like bells wrapped in velvet thunder. Then her feet touched the floor. For the first time in 103 years, the princess stood. The chamber didn't breathe. Even the air molecules hovered in existential suspense. Theo frowned. Wait, was I supposed to kiss her? Did I just pass some ancient galactic test? The guards remained motionless. Seren stepped toward him, and her voice was louder now, still elegant, still ethereal, but with a definite note of something else. Mischief, maybe. The prophecy is engaged. The concordance begins. One of the Earth officials fainted. Theo looked around. I don't know what that means, but I'm 83% sure I should be running. Before he could bolt, a ring of light erupted beneath both of them, locking them in a sphere of floating runes and shifting geometry. Data streamed from her skin to his impulses, patterns dancing across their bodies in synchronous waves. His suit began to hum, his comm implant started reciting poetry in an unknown language, and his teeth briefly felt like they were vibrating Morse code. Seren raised one elegant eyebrow. Interesting. Your neural pathways are chaotic. Thanks, Theo said. I eat a lot of fried foods. One of the alien guards broke rank, weapon raised. Seren turned and with a flick of her finger, disarmed him, literally. The weapon hovered in the air, spinning. The guard, very much still armed, took 3 respectful steps back. Touch him, she said to the room at large, and your lungs will learn grief. Theo mouthed, whoa, then turned to her. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me. She looked at him. Your face is unsymmetrical. He shrugged. I had a very uneven puberty. The runes faded, but the glow remained. Seren reached out and touched his hand. The air around them shifted, vibrated, and then cooled. The chamber was silent for a full minute. Then slowly, as if afraid their muscles might betray them, the humans and aliens alike straightened. Some began whispering furiously into their communication devices. Someone screamed, Protocol 9, and was promptly sedated. Creeley stared at Theo like he'd grown a second head and tried to sell it on the black market. What the hell did you just do? I kissed destiny, apparently, he said. Also, I think my gum melted. Far above, the great machines of the Yell-Sherry high-orbit matrix began to hum. Old codes woke up. Signals pulsed into deep space. Somewhere in a vault beneath Saturn's third moon, a beacon lit up that hadn't glowed in 9,000 years. And somewhere else, very far away, very ancient and very annoyed, something opened a single enormous cosmic eye. Theo sat in the holding cell that wasn't officially called a holding cell. According to the onboard diplomatic AI, it was a private debrief chamber, which was a fancy way of saying, we don't know what to do with you, so we're putting you in here with snacks. There were indeed snacks, an energy bar that vibrated slightly when touched, and a canister of hydration fluid that seemed to hiss in disapproval when he looked at it too long. The walls were a soothing beige that screamed, nothing happened and everything's fine, which made Theo deeply suspicious. He stretched his legs, then kicked them up on the low-slung table. So, any chance I'm not about to be court-martialed by both human and alien governments? Unlikely, came the voice from the ceiling. The AI, Envoy Suite Prime, Subset Liaison 3.4, sounded like someone had taught a librarian to whisper while underwater. However, the alien delegation has requested your presence again. You appear to have triggered a dormant diplomatic prophecy. Theo blinked. Right. The old accidentally kissed a glowing alien princess and became the harbinger of peace move. Textbook stuff. The standard response is execution. And the unstandard one. Unification ceremony. Oh, good, Theo muttered. Either I'm dead or I'm married to a space elf. Before he could formulate a more detailed panic strategy, the door shimmered and deconstructed itself molecule by molecule, revealing Princess Seren. She no longer hovered. That part was unsettling. Watching a woman who had previously floated like a divine screensaver now walk into a room like a regular person was a bit like seeing a unicorn in sweatpants. She sat across from him without invitation. Her gown, still humming with light, still elegant in a way that made gravity seem optional, rustled softly as she moved. Her expression was unreadable, the kind of face you expected to see carved into the side of a mountain, judging you silently for your snack choices. You smell of anxiety, she said. That might be the vibrating granola bar, Theo replied, or possibly the realization that I'm now a cosmic incident. Seren tilted her head slightly. You disrupted a 1,000-year ceremonial cycle. Theo gave a short bow from his seated position. It's a gift. Silence stretched for a moment. Then unexpectedly, she exhaled, softly, almost a sigh, and leaned back in her chair. I remember you, she said. Theo's brain took a moment to parse that. Okay, either you've mistaken me for someone else, or I'm having a really weird dream in which I'm reincarnated royalty. Neither, she said. I remember your essence, from my childhood dreams. A boy with fire in his hands who laughed in the dark. The dream spinners told me it was metaphor. Theo scratched his neck. I did light a med lab on fire once during training. Does that count? Perhaps. More silence. Then Theo asked the question that had been squatting in his brain since the kiss. What is the concordance? Serene's eyes flickered with inner light. It is difficult to translate. It is a binding, a merging of paths, a fusing of genetic lines and ideological constructs, a prophecy told in code and ceremony. A convergence. You're saying I'm part of a prophecy because what? Match your DNA like some intergalactic dating app? Her gaze sharpened. It is not romance. It is resonance. You activated something inside me. Something designed, hidden, waiting. Theo drummed his fingers on the table. I swear I was just trying to cause a minor international incident. I didn't mean to unlock your soul. Seren leaned forward slightly, her long ears twitching. Intentional or not, it has begun. The nexus has stirred. The emissaries are watching. The old worlds have already begun shifting in their orbits. Sounds like a Tuesday, Theo muttered. From the ceiling, the AI chimed in again. Would you like an update on galactic diplomatic positioning? No, both Theo and Seren said at the same time. Another silence. Theo found himself watching her. Really watching. Now that the glowing and levitating were dialed down, she was more human. Or maybe he was just adjusting to a new spectrum of weird. He gestured toward her ears. Do those help with hearing or? She blinked slowly. Yes. Cool. A pause, then she added, also balance and high-frequency emotional tuning. You can hear my feelings? Yours are not subtle. He laughed. Not because it was funny exactly, but because he had the creeping sense that if he didn't find a way to laugh, he might scream instead. Serene's mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile, more like a muscle remembering what smiling was. Then the light shifted. The walls of the room dissolved, revealing not the corridor, but a vast projection of space. Hundreds of ships moving into formation. Human and Yell-Sherry vessels, diplomatic transports, military class, observation drones. The air chilled slightly. They're preparing for war, Seren said. Because of the kiss? Because of the implications, she corrected. You did not just breach protocol, you activated the bridge glyph embedded in my skin. They believe you may be a weapon. Theo stood up. Well, that's just rude. If I were a weapon, I'd at least have cooler boots. Seren rose too. We must leave. You mean, like, escape? Yes. I was hoping you meant leave like, emotionally. The wall behind them split open with a sound like a sigh, revealing a slender corridor pulsing with emergency red. A small transport pod hovered in wait. Seren grabbed his hand, cool skin, strong grip, definitely no longer pretending to float above it all, and pulled him after her. As they raced down the corridor, Theo called out, Are we fugitives yet? Not yet, Seren replied, but we are very close to achieving that status. Theo grinned. Well, I've always wanted to be legendary. Didn't think it would be for smooching a space monarch, but I'll take what I can get. Behind them, sirens began to sing, not wailing alarms, but harmonic pulses, Yell-Sherry war songs encoded in vibration. Seren turned as they reached the pod. They will chase us, she said. Both sides. Theo jumped in beside her. Guess we'll just have to give them something worth chasing. The transport pod accelerated with a kind of aggressive politeness, gently shoving Theo and Serene into their seats as it careened through a maintenance tunnel no wider than an enthusiastic pipe dream. Theo was fairly certain the pod was running on a combination of magnetic propulsion, light guild, and stubborn alien engineering. His stomach filed an official complaint around the third sharp turn. "So," he said, gripping the edge of his seat as the pod twisted again, "what's the plan? Fly until the galaxy runs out of hallway?" Serene was manipulating a floating control orb in front of her with fluid gestures. The orb responded with flashes of alien symbols and a pleasant chiming sound that somehow sounded smug. "We exit the diplomatic cruiser through a concealed maintenance shaft, then reroute to a planetary drift capsule tethered near the moons of Halkari." Theo stared at her. That sentence was made entirely of words and yet still makes me feel like a raccoon at a math exam. "You'll understand it later." I have a solid history of not understanding things later. The pod jostled slightly as it hit a magnetic coupling junction. Theo's head bounced off the padded side wall, which responded by lighting up and saying, "Sorry," in 6 languages. Does your whole species build things that apologize when they hurt you? Only the expensive models. The tunnel suddenly opened into a chamber the size of a small cargo bay. Above them loomed the undercarriage of the Yelshari cruiser, a marvel of biomechanical architecture shaped like a manta ray had swallowed a cathedral. The pod slowed, latched onto a magnetic track, and hissed to a stop. Serene stood first. "We climb now." Theo looked up. The access shaft above them rose into darkness, lined with glowing handholds and air filters that pulsed like they were breathing. "You guys ever heard of elevators?" "We abolished them after the incident." "Should I ask?" "No." They climbed. Well, Serene climbed. Theo followed, making the kinds of noises that suggested his limbs were filing a formal protest. Each handhold was warm to the touch, pulsing gently as it recognized his grip. Somewhere in the shaft, a cluster of bioluminescent maintenance drones blinked at him, clearly judging. "How many more of these steps are there?" Theo gasped. 48. "You counted?" "Twice." "Why would you?" "Never mind. Of course you did." They emerged into a small docking node, barely large enough to fit the capsule Serene had mentioned. It looked like a cross between an escape pod and a luxury egg. Theo wiped sweat from his brow and nodded toward it. "Please tell me that thing doesn't require manual piloting." "It does not," she said. "It merely requires neural calibration, spatial harmony, and an absence of intrusive thought." Theo groaned. "I'm 90% intrusive thoughts and 8% sarcasm. The other 2% is tacos." Serene placed her hand on a panel. The pod opened like a yawning mechanical beetle, revealing 2 seats and a central neural interface node that looked suspiciously like it was designed to judge your deepest regrets. He climbed in and immediately realized the seat was molding itself to his body. "Okay, that's weird. That's deeply weird." "It's a trust interface. It's touching my thoughts." "Just the surface ones." Theo scowled. "Those are the embarrassing ones." The capsule sealed around them, and in an instant, the pod detached from the cruiser. There was a moment of weightlessness, a brief sensation of falling into a vacuum of light, and then stars. Stars everywhere. Their pod moved silently, invisible to most radar systems, gliding past the underbelly of a diplomatic behemoth and out into the orbital lanes beyond. "Where exactly are we going?" Theo asked, squinting at the swirling constellation map unfolding around them. "There's a relay station on Halkari's 3rd moon," Serene said. "It's abandoned, but still functional. We'll be able to reroute signals, access the galactic archive, and possibly find out why you're the one who activated the prophecy." Theo leaned back, watching stars streak by. "Right, the kiss prophecy. Still weird, by the way. You could have bowed, you could have spoken. Instead, you kissed me." "Well, it seemed like the least expected option." "It was." A pause stretched between them. Then Serene added, "You tasted like menthol and adrenaline." Theo smirked. "Sounds like a discontinued cologne." Silence again, though not uncomfortable. Just suspended, like a breath held between questions. Then the pod dimmed its light slightly, a signal that meant they were approaching their destination. Outside, the moon of Halkari loomed, a dead rock wrapped in ruins, orbiting an ancient gas giant that spun too fast for its size. "Tell me something," Seren said quietly. "Before all this, what were you?" "Me?" Theo shrugged. "Just a grunt with a decent aim and a bad sense of timing. They call me Sergeant Oops behind my back. You infiltrated the highest diplomatic chamber of two civilizations. I was technically just standing there. You kissed me. Still technically standing. You ignited an event horizon of interstellar consequence." Theo nodded. "Yeah, that sounds like something I do by mistake." They landed. The pod hissed open, and the air inside the relay station smelled like old circuits and abandoned protocol. The place had the vibe of a room where something important used to happen. Lights flickered reluctantly. Dust floated in artificial gravity like sleepy fireflies. Seren led the way, fingers flicking across ancient control panels as if they remembered her. She moved like someone who had always known how to wake sleeping things. Theo, meanwhile, was trying to figure out whether the console he was leaning on was a chair, a weapon, or a sentient species that had gone into hiding. The central holotable flared to life. Ancient records began unfolding. Scripts in layered alien dialects, images of stars in impossible configurations, the outline of a man kissing a glowing woman. "That's me," Theo muttered. Seren stared. The prophecy isn't just symbolic, it's visual, accurate. Which means it was written after it happened. "No," she whispered. "It was written before, thousands of years ago." Theo pointed at the image. "I'm not that old." Seren stepped closer to the projection. "Unless the event isn't linear," he frowned. "Are you saying the prophecy traveled back in time? Or forward? Or sideways? Or it exists outside causality?" Theo groaned. "You realize this means I kissed someone destiny had already approved of. That's like making out with a background check." A rumble shook the station. Lights flickered. Seren spun toward the entrance. "They found us." Theo sighed. "Yep, this is about the speed my life tends to collapse." She turned to him, face calm, eyes glowing slightly. "Ready?" He shrugged. "Do I look ready?" "Yes, terribly so." Theo squared his shoulders and reached for the nearest object that might be a weapon or possibly a coffee machine. "Let's go disappoint some heavily armed people." The first explosion was polite as far as explosions go. More of a dignified thud than a cataclysm, like someone knocking firmly on the door of reality with a large cosmic fist. The old relay station shuddered under the impact, lights dimming as a protective field snapped up around the central control room. Theo clutched the console he was standing beside, which to his deep satisfaction was not a sentient being after all, and glanced at Seren. "Okay, so, do we have a plan that doesn't involve becoming smears on the wall?" Seren's eyes were glowing again, which was either encouraging or deeply concerning. She moved with alarming precision across the control interface, rerouting power and initiating a lockdown protocol that looked an awful lot like an invitation for a siege. "They sent a Hunter-class skiff," she said. "Skiff? That sounds kind of adorable. Like a spaceship you'd knit a hat for." "This model is named Inexorable Pursuit." Theo winced. "Less adorable. They won't risk destroying the relay station. Too many archived memories. They'll come in small units. Hand-picked operatives." "Oh, good," Theo muttered. "The fancy kind." Seren finished her adjustments and turned to him, eyes serious. "You're not trained for this." Theo gave a lopsided shrug. "Well, I've been shot at, stabbed, disintegrated halfway once, and had my spleen replaced with a synthetic jelly sack. So I've got experience in, not dying immediately." "You're impossible," she said, though her voice betrayed the beginning of a smile. "And yet here I am, stubbornly alive. You want me to hide?" She paused. "Number, I want you with me. If they get to me alone, the prophecy is still theirs to rewrite. But with you, it becomes unpredictable." "They don't like unpredictable." Theo cracked his knuckles. "I live to disappoint the expectations of powerful people." They moved quickly through the hall, Seren pulling a small weapon from a hidden compartment in the wall. It was a strange thing. Thin, shaped like an origami leaf, humming with unstable energy. Does it shoot lasers? Theo asked. No. Grenades? No. Does it do anything violent at all? It convinces molecules to change their mind. Theo blinked. You made a weapon out of peer pressure? She handed it to him. Just point and be persuasive. They ducked into the main access corridor just as the first of the intruders arrived. 3 figures shimmered into view at the far end. Yelshari peacebreakers, all long limbs and crystalline armor, moving with the grace of bad intentions. Hold, Seren whispered. I'm holding, very still, very ready, very underqualified. The peacebreakers advanced, scanning. One of them cocked its head, and a ripple passed through its armor. Theo whispered, Can they smell fear? Number, but they can smell sarcasm. Well then, we're doomed. Seren stepped forward. The lead peacebreaker raised its hand, but didn't fire. Protocol still mattered, it seemed. No one wanted to be the one to accidentally murder a princess mid-prophecy. That sort of paperwork lasted centuries. You violate sacred cycle, the lead one said, voice like crushed glass wrapped in velvet. Return, be reabsorbed, preserve the script. The script is flawed, Seren replied. Let it crack. Theo leaned sideways. That was poetic, also slightly terrifying. Your presence is unauthorized, the peacebreaker said, now looking directly at Theo. He offered a little wave. Yeah, well, neither is yours. I didn't see any guest passes. They opened fire. Theo yelped and dove for cover as beams of light cracked through the air, turning ancient walls into glittering shrapnel. Seren moved like wind made visible, her own weapon blooming into action. It didn't fire so much as persuade space to stop behaving. One of the peacebreakers twisted midair and vanished in a soft pop, like a bad idea being canceled mid-thought. Theo peeked over the debris, raised the peer pressure weapon, and yelled, Hey, molecules! Maybe try being somewhere else. The beam surged forward and hit a second peacebreaker, who blinked twice before melting sideways into a puddle of confused geometry. I cannot believe that worked. Don't get cocky, Seren snapped, dodging another blast. I'm already cocky. It's my only defense mechanism. The last peacebreaker lunged, claws out, and Theo met it with a half-decent tackle that ended with both of them sliding across the floor into a wall. The peacebreaker snarled, shimmering, and Theo did the only thing he could think of. He licked it. There was a moment of stillness. Seren, watching from the side, blinked. Did you just... It was a tactical distraction, Theo wheezed. The peacebreaker, now thoroughly confused and maybe a little violated, hesitated long enough for Seren to hit it with the persuader beam. It turned into a chair, a very surprised-looking chair. Theo sat on it. For the record, he said, panting, I hate everything about today. Seren was silent for a long moment. Then she laughed. Not a formal Yelshari giggle or a diplomatic chuckle, but an actual laugh, warm and involuntary and surprised by itself. Your methods, she said between breaths, are impressive, he offered, chaotic. I take that as a compliment. They retreated to the control room, reactivating lockdown and reinforcing the signal dampeners. Theo slumped into a corner. So how long before more of them show up? Seren hesitated. The Concordance Council will not stop. They believe control is survival. They fear change. And this, us, is change. Theo sighed. Yeah, well, I was never much of a status quo guy. Seren sat beside him. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The relay station hummed softly, running on half-dead systems and sheer willpower. The chair that used to be a peacebreaker sat quietly in the corner, resigned to its new identity. You kissed me, she said suddenly, not as accusation, but wonder. Yeah, Theo said. I do that sometimes. Impulsive reflex. Usually reserved for people I don't think will vaporize me for it. And now? He looked at her. Her long ears twitched, attuned to his heartbeat, maybe even his doubts. Now, he said slowly, I think I'm starting to understand why I did it, and why I do it again. She didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. The relay station's internal lights buzzed like they were trying to remember how to illuminate properly, and the console screens flickered in soft waves, responding to Seren's presence like affectionate pets, unsure if they were about to be fed or rebooted. Theo watched her from across the control chamber, where he was attempting to disassemble a peacebreaker's weapon with the kind of finesse usually reserved for toddlers attacking furniture with plastic spoons. "So let me get this straight," he said, prying at a glowing panel with a multi-tool that was probably not rated for alien tech. "The Council wants to either reprogram you or recycle me, and their grand strategy is to send 3 sparkly ninja snails at us every 20 minutes? Seren didn't look up. "That's the elegant version of the plan, yes. Well, it's working wonders for our cardio. I haven't done this much running since that time I broke into a supply depot for a sandwich." "You broke into a military depot for a sandwich?" Theo raised a finger. "Correction. The sandwich. It was a legendary sandwich. Wrapped in 3 layers of stasis foil and sprinkled with forbidden spices, the chef had diplomatic immunity. And what happened?" "I got the sandwich," he said proudly. "And I didn't enjoy it. The stress ruined my appetite." Seren glanced at him, one eyebrow raised. "That is both the most absurd and the most human story I've heard." "Thank you. I take pride in my mediocrity." The relay station hummed with a deep vibration, one not caused by the failing infrastructure or the distant threat of reinforcements, but by something older. Theo noticed it first when the floor began glowing in a spiraling pattern beneath Seren's feet. She paused, looking down, and the pattern pulsed outward like a ripple in stone. "That seems new," he said. "It's not new," she murmured. "It's old, prehistoric, from the first Concorde. I'm guessing this isn't one of those cool things that unlocks bonus levels and free snacks." She didn't answer. Instead, she knelt, placing both hands on the console, and the relay station responded with a low, resonant chord that made Theo's molars itch. "This facility, it's not just a relay, it's a vault." Theo stood, gently dropping the half-dismantled weapon, which had started making ominous purring sounds across the room. "A vault of what? Weaponry? Data? Secrets?" Serene's face was pale, glowing faintly. "Histories, unredacted ones." Theo blinked. "Like the truth?" "Yes, about the Concorde, the Yel-Sheri, the Council, and the human expansion that triggered the first silent war. It's all here, buried under permissions, locked to my genetic pattern." He crossed his arms. "So why haven't you accessed it before?" "Because I was never activated," she said quietly. "My status as princess was ceremonial, symbolic, until the prophecy identified me, until you kissed me." Theo's brain tripped over the idea again. "We really need a new term for what happened. Kissed makes it sound like I pulled you aside at a party, not collapsed 2 political empires with lip contact." She touched a new panel. The relay chamber responded by opening a vertical data column in the center of the room. A spiral of light containing alien symbols, human script, and fragments of memory that shimmered like caught breath. Theo stepped closer. The words and images passed through him as he moved. Scenes of peace, treaties rewritten mid-draft, of battles recorded only in myth, of a secret order within the Council that manipulated timelines to ensure predictability. "They've been editing history," he said. "Not just editing," Seren whispered. "Controlling it, predictive manipulation. They ensure only certain choices are ever made. Our prophecy wasn't fate, it was preceded. That's cheating. They call it stability." Theo squinted at a sequence of dates. "Wait a minute, one of these timelines has my face on it, and hold on, is that a karaoke night?" Seren flushed. "Ignore that one." "I absolutely cannot." She turned away from the spiral, focusing instead on the controls that would allow her to broadcast this knowledge. Theo could see the weight of it all pressing on her, the burden of unveiling truths no one wanted revealed. "We expose this, it'll tear apart half the known political alliances," he said. "I know. It might start another war. I know. I may never be able to buy space tacos again." She looked at him. Theo shrugged. "Look, I'm just saying, consequences come in all sizes. Do you want to run?" He considered it, seriously, for maybe half a second. "Honestly? Yeah, kinda. But I won't." "Why not?" Because someone's got to stand next to the person brave enough to push the red button. And besides, he added, I already kissed the revolution. Might as well see how she dances. A soft beep interrupted them. Outside the station, a dozen new signatures had appeared in orbit. Not just peacebreakers this time, a full diplomatic enforcement armada. Seren scanned the readings. They're blocking all long-range transmissions. Theo raised an eyebrow. That include pizza deliveries? Especially pizza deliveries. He stepped toward the console. So if we can't send it out, we take it with us. She frowned. Where? He turned to her, grinning like a man who'd just invented a new kind of bad idea. I know a guy. He owes me a favor. Has a ship that can get us to the neural archives of Kale Prime. You trust him? Absolutely not. But I once helped him fake his own death using a crate of wigs and an inflatable moose. He owes me. Seren hesitated for exactly 2 seconds. Get your gear. Theo punched the air. Yes, see? That's the spirit. Adventure, danger, poorly conceived plans. This is where I thrive. They moved quickly, packing what little they had, transferring the memory column into a crystalline core that Seren locked into a portable archive. As the outer doors of the station began to hum under pressure, they made their way to the rear docking chute where an old rusted emergency sled awaited. Theo eyed it with suspicion. It looks like a toaster that lost a fight. It'll get us through the blockade. Will it get us alive through the blockade? Seren tossed him a helmet. That depends on your flying. Theo put the helmet on. We're so dead, she smiled, but unpredictably. As the sled launched into the cold vacuum of space, spiraling toward a rendezvous point known only to a questionable ally with bad taste in aliases, Theo leaned back, staring at the stars streaking past. So just to be clear, he said, we're running away from an armada holding the most explosive political truth in the sector and planning to leak it to a librarian planet guarded by telepathic birds. Seren nodded. That sums it up. I love our life choices. Wait until chapter 6, she said, smirking. Theo groaned. Don't do that. You'll jinx it. The emergency sled landed with the grace of a brick attempting ballet. Metal groaned, inertial dampeners whined, and Theo's teeth rattled in his skull like they were trying to escape. Seren unlatched her harness with practiced calm, while Theo flailed out of his like a man being attacked by an aggressive seatbelt. The door hissed open, revealing a docking bay that smelled like old ozone and fresh conspiracy. A figure stood waiting, wrapped in an absurd cloak the color of spoiled yogurt. Theo sighed. Of course it's you. The man bowed theatrically. Theo, Seren. Welcome to the Bibliotheca Exocale. I see you've arrived via budget sled. Nice to see your fashion sense still has no survivors, Theo replied, stepping onto the deck. Why are you wearing a curtain? It's called Velnik ceremonial wool, the man sniffed. Woven in zero gravity, dyed in the blood of fruit flies. It looks like laundry that gave up halfway, Theo muttered. The man turned to Seren, offering a deeper bow. Princess Seren, I am Hanlo Dex, archivist, trader, occasionally a food critic. Seren nodded once. We come bearing history, and possibly several tracking signatures. Then you've come to the right place. We specialize in unwanted truths and unannounced guests. As if on cue, a low alarm pulsed through the station, followed by the voice of a sentient security system named Parveen, who sounded like a disapproving aunt. 4 concordance vessels detected in orbit. Please consider not panicking. They are currently hailing. Their message is impolite. Theo turned to Hanlo. Do you have a cloaking system? We have a cloaking theory, involving shadows and prayer. Comforting. They followed Hanlo down a corridor lined with light-sensitive foliage. One plant tried to lick Theo. He swatted it gently. Why do your hallways feel like I'm walking through a museum curated by a wizard with ADHD? Because that's exactly what you're doing, Hanlo replied cheerfully. He led them to a secure chamber. If secure meant a floating cube of glass surrounded by orbiting drones that looked like disappointed marshmallows. Seren stepped inside and placed the memory core into a socket. The cube reacted instantly, lines of data cascading across the air in patterns Theo couldn't read, but found deeply judgmental. The data is dense, Hanlo muttered, eyes darting. They've buried entire timelines, rewritten species migrations, suppressed planetary revolutions. There's a footnote here accusing someone of inventing the color blue 300 years too early. Color conspiracy, Theo said, leaning against the wall. Always the most sinister. Can you broadcast it? Seren asked. Not from here, Hanlo said. Not cleanly. The council's already jamming half the outer ring, but we can encode it into the librarium, one of the neural nodes. A single download, and anyone will see the truth. Let's do it, Theo said. Slowly, Seren added. We don't know who's watching. Too late for that, Parveen said dryly. They've launched boarding probes. Theo tensed. Define probes. Long, metallic, and intrusive, the voice replied. Like uninvited party guests with better equipment. Seren turned to Hanlo. Where do we hold them? Hanlo gestured toward a series of hatches along the ceiling. The labyrinth. It was originally designed as a test of mental clarity. Now it's mostly used to confuse delivery drones and ex-boyfriends. Theo grinned. Sounds perfect. They made their way to the entrance just as the first boarding team arrived. This time it wasn't just peacebreakers, it was wardens. The kind of agents who could disassemble an ideology mid-sentence. They moved with silent discipline, visors scanning, armor absorbing light like it was trying not to be noticed. Theo peeked around a corner. So, we distract them while Hanlo uploads the memory core? Correct, Seren said, drawing her persuader weapon. Theo blinked. Wait, that's the plan? We distract? It worked last time. Last time I turned one of them into a chair. That's not a sustainable strategy. Be unpredictable, she said, stepping into the corridor. Theo followed reluctantly. One day we're going to have a plan that starts with sneak and ends with safe. They led the wardens through a series of traps and mazes, hallways that shifted layouts, doors that opened into non-Euclidean broom closets, and a particularly aggressive hologram of an angry librarian that recited finds in a forgotten language. One warden got trapped in a looped staircase. Another found herself endlessly rotating inside a mirror dimension where her own reflection kept issuing parking citations. Theo ducked behind a statue shaped like a contemplative squid. So far, so good, Seren crouched beside him. You say that every time right before something explodes. Something exploded. A new breach tore through the eastern wall, and a concordance executor emerged, taller than the others, half machine, eyes pulsing with administrative fury. It looked around and spoke in a voice that sounded like lawsuits being filed. You are in violation of Treaty Clause 37, subsection... Okay, no, Theo said, stepping out. You don't get to start with subsections. That's illegal. The executor raised its weapon. Seren stepped forward. I am the Princess of Yel Shar. I claim sanctuary under archive law. The executor paused. Outdated. Invalid. I kissed her, Theo added. Does that help? No, Theo sighed. Didn't think so. Before the executor could fire, a high-pitched squeal filled the air. Hanlo's voice over the comms. Upload complete. Theo grinned. We win. For certain values of win, the data is in the librarium. Anyone syncing a ThoughtNet reader will receive it, including Concord agents. The executor hesitated. Information began pouring into its interface. Its eyes flickered. Its stance softened. Theo watched it, heart pounding. Hey, are you okay, big guy? You're looking a little conflicted. The executor turned slowly to face its fellow wardens, who now stood uncertainly, data flickering across their visors. I have doubts, it said finally. Seren nodded. Good. That's how change starts. Theo stepped forward. Also therapy, but we can schedule that later. Hanlo appeared behind them, carrying 3 mugs of something steaming and suspiciously fizzy. Victory beverage? He offered. Theo took one. What's in it? Mostly sugar and mild regret. They drank. The executor watched, confused but no longer aggressive. Parveen reported the Concordance ships had gone quiet, perhaps not defeated, but uncertain. I think, Seren said slowly, we've started something. Theo raised his cup. To bad ideas that work? To kissing the revolution, Hanlo added, clinking his mug. Seren smiled. And to what comes next? Theo glanced at the distant stars, wondering just how far truth could go once set free. 3 weeks after the Librarian broadcast, the galaxy had entered a state of collective indigestion. Not war, not peace, something in between. A kind of stunned, awkward recalibration, like a family reunion where everyone had just discovered they were adopted. Across the stars, old alliances frayed, new ones sparked, and conspiracy theorists filed formal apologies for not going far enough. Truth had been unboxed, shaken loose from its containment field, and now it drifted freely across comm channels and minds like an unsupervised toddler in a fireworks shop. Theo sat on the roof of a former patrol station on Vega 12, watching the twin suns stretch their light across the horizon like lazy cats. In the distance, a flock of reflective drones practiced coordinated dance moves, probably for an upcoming cultural celebration or an ill-advised flash mob. He took a long sip from a thermal mug filled with something thick, warm, and probably not poisonous. Hanlo swore it was a traditional Kalian beverage called Grath Slor. It tasted like hot licorice and betrayal. "Remind me again why we're staying here," Theo asked. Behind him, Seren was lying on her back atop a wide solar array, arms folded behind her head, long ears twitching slightly in the wind. "Because it's quiet, and they can't trace us easily through the remnant clouds. We also could have stayed on the Archivist moon, in that room with the talking pillows. The pillows were too judgmental. They praised me. They pitied you." He threw a pebble toward her. It hovered in the low gravity, then was caught by a passing insectoid life form who seemed mildly insulted by the intrusion. "Anyway," Theo said, "I thought we were going to do something with our fame. You know, change the galaxy, lead movements, or at least get invited to fancy parties." "We are doing something," Seren said. "We're staying alive. We're giving the information time to work, and we're making them nervous. They've stopped sending bounty hunters at least. Only because one of them ended up joining your fan club. She said she liked my boots. She said she liked your recklessness." Theo considered that. Still counts. He stood and walked over to her, looking up at the sky. "It's weird. I thought there'd be more ceremony, you know? The moment we won, or broke things, or whatever it is we did. We made people see," Seren said. "Sometimes that's the biggest rebellion. And what now? We just wait. We plan. We choose the next move. You helped free an entire sector from scripted history. That kiss, it wasn't just prophecy, it was permission for everyone to stop pretending." Theo gave a mock bow. "And here I thought I was just a reckless soldier with questionable boundaries." "You still are," she said, smirking. A notification blinked on the portable holoreader beside them. Hanlo's voice crackled through, along with the unmistakable background noise of someone cooking too loudly. "I bring news, children of chaos. The Concordance Council has issued its first public amendment in over a century. Acknowledgement of archival manipulation. They're calling it the transparency pivot. I would have preferred oops, our bad, but democracy's never perfect." Theo raised an eyebrow. "They actually admitted it? Sort of, with disclaimers. But it's a start." Seren stood and brushed solar dust from her tunic. "Then it's working." Theo nodded. "We should celebrate. Don't suggest karaoke. You love my rendition of Rocket Man." "I'm still recovering." They made their way back into the station, where Hanlo had set up a temporary HQ. Drones flitted around, rearranging furniture that didn't need rearranging, while a nervous peacebreaker turned ally sat at a console, reading aloud decrypted memos that occasionally ended with someone screaming in a language composed entirely of numbers. "Any more sightings?" Seren asked. "One ship tried to dock unannounced yesterday," Hanlo replied, "but it was just a smuggler looking for spare socks." Theo dropped into a chair. "You'd be amazed how often that happens." "Any word from your contact in the Outer Rim?" Seren asked Hanlo. He nodded. "She says there's been a wave of resignations among the Council's outer ministries. People stepping down, some speaking out, and in the human sectors, your general has apparently written a memoir." Theo snorted. "Bet she left out the part where she ordered my execution twice." She did include a chapter titled The Soldier Who Wouldn't Kneel. Theo blinked. Okay, I might read that. Later, when the station quieted and the suns dipped low, Seren and Theo stood outside again, gazing at the stars. The universe hadn't changed. It still spun, still burned, still threatened to collapse in unexpected places. But they had changed. You know, Theo said, if someone told me a few months ago I'd kiss a myth, uncover a galaxy-wide lie, and survive it all with most of my limbs, I'd have called them insane. Most of your limbs, he wiggled his fingers. Emotionally speaking, Seren leaned closer. You were never just a soldier. You just hadn't seen it yet. I'm still not royalty. Number, you're worse. You're a symbol. Oh, great. Do I have to give speeches? Just don't kiss anyone else. That would be confusing. He laughed. No promises, but he didn't. Not that night, not later. Because that kiss had meant something far beyond rebellion or prophecy. It had started something, an unraveling, a rewriting, a path through chaos towards something not yet named. In time, others would rise, others would follow. Some would fight to restore the control, others to tear down the remaining lies. But for now, in the quiet between battles, there was space to breathe, to rebuild, to imagine something better. And somewhere far above, floating silently in the memory lattice of the librarium, the kiss still echoed, bright, defiant, and utterly human. The end.